एक सेकंड ready 5 4 3 2
Good morning and welcome to Davos. It is -7 degrees. It's early in the morning, but the activities have already started. It was a frantic night with headlines breaking virtually through the night because President Trump, after his speech here in Davos, decided that he is not going to impose the 10% tariffs that he had threatened the EU with, that he had threatened 8 European countries with, because he wanted Greenland. Now remember, Trump in his speech here at the World Economic Forum yesterday said he was not going to use force. He wants Greenland, but he will not use force. And that is what resulted in the US markets rallying. And later, after a meeting with European leaders and the NATO General Secretary, President Trump tweeted that they have arrived at a framework for Greenland. It's a long-term framework, and that officials like Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, etc., and JD Vance will work through the details, but essentially saying we've had a breakthrough and we will build the Golden Dome, but we're not going to impose the 10% tariffs that were supposed to come into effect from the 1st of February. By the way, we haven't really heard much about what this Greenlandic framework is going to mean, what the deal, if any, that's been arrived at, because reports suggest that the NATO General Secretary has essentially said that there was no specific Greenland framework that was discussed or arrived at. So this is a developing story, but it goes back to the point that was being made by many of our guests here on CNBC-TV18 in Davos. The markets didn't like the move on Greenland, and it shows the domestic constituency in the US doesn't seem to like it either. Polls suggest that this is not a topic that is getting approval ratings for President Trump. And perhaps that's the reason why you saw this backing off, this pulling back on the use of force, as well as the threat of tariffs that President Trump had spoken about. Now, where does this leave the US and EU? As I mentioned, and as you've heard many of the guests here on our Davos coverage tell you, Europe has never been unhappier, Europe has never been angrier with what the US has done or what the US is threatening to do. And there has been a pushback. So yesterday, for instance, you saw the EU suspend the EU-US trade deal, saying that there will be no vote on that at this point in time. And that perhaps is an indication that EU is saying enough. We cannot be pushed into a corner unilaterally by the United States of America. So what will all of this lead to in the next few hours, in the next few days? We don't really know. But at 10:30 Davos time, there is going to be the other big development that President Trump has been pushing and championing as his big breakthrough idea for world peace, the Board of Peace. We've now seen signatories, the UAE, Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan come on board as signatories to President Trump's Board of Peace. India so far has not given any communication on whether it intends to join or not. None of the G7 nations are part of that as of today. So that signing is going to take place later this morning, and that is going to be an important event to keep a track of and keep an eye on. And President Trump is certainly going to make some noise about that. There has of course been controversy around the structure of this Board of Peace, as well as the membership fee and how it intends to operate. But he leaves this afternoon. Davos for President Trump will come to a close this afternoon, and he will fly back to the United States. Will we leave with a less fractured relationship, or will there be a repair? That is the big question. But at least the threat of tariff, which was very imminent, has pulled back just a little bit. As far as India is concerned, you heard that soundbite from President Trump here on CNBC-TV18 to our colleague at Money Control, Chandra, where he said that he hopes for a good deal. So let's see whether there is any further movement on that front and whether we actually see any definitive, tangible action to take that deal forward. Remember, as we've heard from many people, including US officials like Howard Lutnick, it's virtually been a done deal for a long time. Will they finally close it or not is the big question. We've got a lot planned for you here on our last day of covering Davos 2026. We've got more global newsmakers. Remember, you've seen 50 global CEOs only on this channel. This has been the single destination for global CEOs to bring their perspective on the global economy, but more importantly, their perspective on India. And the big takeaway there from our conversations with global CEOs on India is that they continue to be believers in the long-term story. Many of them continue to invest in India. You heard from the Uber CEO talking about launching new services in India. You heard from ABB saying that they will double down on their growth plans in India. You heard from Honeywell's CEO Vimal Kapoor on the importance of India. Novartis's global CEO Vas Narasimhan on how India continues to be strategic to them from an R&D point of view. Stephen Schwarzman, the CEO of Blackstone, that interview making headlines because he said India is the #1 market in terms of return for Blackstone, one of the largest asset managers in the world. So there is the India story that continues to draw in interest, and of course committed investors to India continue to look at India positively. So that is a theme that is of course playing out. But you'll see more global newsmakers here on CNBC-TV18 starting this morning with the CTO of Ericsson. He's the global group CEO of Ericsson, betting big on things like agents and what they are going to do to Ericsson, as well as to the way that telecom networks operate. Of course, they have that big relationship with Bharti Airtel in India. So a lot more coming up for you. It's been a grueling week for us here in Davos, covering all the action and bringing it live to our viewers on CNBC-TV18. But we do hope that you enjoyed watching our programming. We do hope you enjoyed watching the conversations that we've brought you. On the last day, we will get you some more headliners. Till then, I hand it back to you, and we will be back in a moment after this short break.